The only thing I wanted to cover as well, before we do a few super chats, was the rumors that are swirling around. There's a couple of different ones regarding the events going on at Lucasfilm, because Disney, I guess, is a company in panic at the moment, and they are losing money hand over fist, and they're starting to fire a lot of people. And I guess the question is going to come down to, like, when does that hammer start to drop on Lucasfilm? Because if I had to pick a company that's not pulling its weight, it would be Lucasfilm. But yeah, there's two rumors that are swirling around there. One is that apparently, if they don't have a new Star Wars movie in theaters by the end of 2025, then that's it for the current management there.
Really?
Mostly Kathleen Kennedy. That was apparently the deadline that had been set. They have to have a new Star Wars movie out by then, which may be a case of setting an impossible deadline, so it gives you an excuse to get rid of someone. I don't know. So that's one aspect of it. The other one that I've heard, and I think Midnight's Edge and Doomcock have both reported on this, and I think Cameron Pasha as well, is that Bob Iger has had a meeting with Kathleen Kennedy and pretty much said, if Indiana Jones 5 isn't a success, like if it doesn't turn a profit, then you're done. You're going to be shown out the door. And that seems to be the ultimatum, which again, you might as well ask her to build a fucking escalator to the moon. When it comes to making Indy 5 a success, that movie's going to...
What does success mean? Just make a profit at all, or make over $1 billion?
I think the number he was quoting was 900 million.
Right.
Now, I think that's pretty much round about the break-even point anyway, because they've had to do really extensive reshoots on this. And so that's probably where you're going to be looking just to make profit.
See, my first question whenever I hear any Kathleen Kennedy rumor is, where did the rumor come from, and does he wear a mask? But on the assumption that it didn't come from that particular source, I still don't really believe it. I mean, there has been, of course, the big change in management at the top of Disney, because Iger's back and Chapek is gone. Iger is kind of astute in that he got out quite deliberately at quite particularly the right time, and has come back in, to rescue the company from the doldrums it's been left in. So it might be the case that he is, finally cottoned on to the fact that the management team at Lucasfilm is utter garbage, even though they were all there when he was last there and he didn't do anything about it then. So maybe he'll do that, but I just think we've heard every day for every year for many years that Kathleen Kennedy is going to be out by the end of next week. It's never happened.
Yeah.
And I would be very surprised if it happened this time. There's no way anyone, I don't think, can expect Indiana Jones 5 to pull in that kind of figure. I would be surprised if they'd even set that as a target. The only sort of salutary thing about Kathleen Kennedy is that she's approaching 70 now, I think, and US life expectancy is dropping, so eventually those two things will overlap. But until they do, I think she'll remain in place.
I think my assumption had always been that she would do Indy 5, get that out the gate, and then retire with all the accolades and all the praise that comes with someone who's in her position. And so it would, from the outside, it would seem very much like she had done her tenure and she was just leaving of her own volition, and you couldn't really argue otherwise. Like, there would be no way to prove it, but. I don't know what the mentality is there. Maybe she wants to stay on. Maybe she wants to oversee more Star Wars movie projects. God knows why she would want to, when the others that she's been in charge of have mostly failed, or at least had severely declining returns. If I was Bob Iger, I would want rid of her, and probably not just her, but like the entire culture within Lucasfilm that she seems to have fostered. And I think that's going to be the bigger challenge, really, is like simply having her retire, like willingly or unwillingly, is one thing, but to then root out all of the people that she's brought in and that culture that she's fostered there, that's going to be the bigger problem.
And that's the other irritating thing with all the fixation on her as well, which is that you really think that this is all one person? It's not just Kathleen Kennedy, it's everyone who's been hired, it's everyone in the writers' rooms, it's everyone else who's also under contract. Okay, if you want to do a huge clean out, by all means do. But it's also worth remembering that very few other studios have demonstrated an ability to hire people any better in caliber and quality than the people that Lucasfilm currently has. Is Lucasfilm really so much worse than any other Disney-owned studio or any other major studio, come to that? It doesn't seem to me that there is there is a huge pool of writers out there, but it doesn't seem to me that they're any more likely to be hired by a revamped Lucasfilm than they are by any other studio at the moment.
I can see it from the point of view of investment on return, because at least with Marvel, well, they bought it and they've made a shit ton of money out of it over the years. So almost at this point, it's like, well, we can forgive a few flops. You know, with Star Wars though, they haven't made a penny out of all the streaming TV shows. Like, nobody is fucking signing on to Disney Plus to get Star Wars content.
No.
It's all came down to the movies. Okay, you know, Force Awakens was a big success. Rogue One was pretty decent success, and then Last Jedi divided the fan base, and then from there on, it's just been a disaster. And so that has not yielded a return on investment, and it must be a source of frustration as a businessman, as an investor in this company, to say like, well, you have not pulled your weight. Marvel have produced like 25, 30 movies in the past 10 years. You have produced like 5.
And she's canned that many movies in the last 20 years.
Yeah. And well, that, I guess, again, that would be another sign of like mismanagement. When you're hiring and firing directors, you're announcing projects that go nowhere. You know, that is the sign of a person who isn't in charge of their own studio, who doesn't know how to get the right people involved and can't see projects through to completion. If that was any other person but her, they would have been shown the door years ago.
I mean, it's got to be considered an absolute horrific disaster. They wanted Star Wars to be at the MCU's level at this point.
That's what they tried to build it into. They tried to apply the MCU model to it. That's why you started getting all those, like, a Star Wars story. You know, you had Rogue One. Okay, success. Solo, disaster, flop. You know, and that put paid to that idea. You're not going to have your interconnected universe where everything builds on each other. And so you don't have that money printing model that they did with the MCU. They could have done potentially if the mainline Star Wars sequels had been a huge success. You could have built off that for sure. You could add a whole bunch of subsidiary TV shows and stuff set in that timeline. Great. Nobody was interested though. That's why they had to go back to the Mandalorian period.
Look how that's worked out.
Yeah. Well, again, you know, like hiring the wrong people. Maybe you've got.
Yeah, I think so.
Jon Favreau, okay, he was able to make a go of it by doing really simplistic storytelling for the first season or two, but ultimately he's not a TV writer, and so he doesn't know how to do episodic storytelling. And season 3's just dropped off a cliff.
I get this.
No one even cares.
There must be more to the failure of The Mandalorian than Jon Favreau, because Jon Favreau, okay, he's not a brilliant writer, but that you don't have to be even an adequate writer to avoid the mistakes that he's making in the Mandalorian scripts. I mean, season 3, episode 2 completely overrides and eliminates the point of season 3, episode 1, and that's not something you do just by not being a good TV writer. That's something that you do if you just don't give a shit, surely.
I don't know if that's like directives coming from the studio and saying like, you know, these are the elements that are selling well, that allows us to make a bit of money. You need to like make that the focal point of your storytelling. I'm not sure.
No, but it is a good example of the failure in the cash grab model. In that I don't know if it was proven to be correct when it was reported that season 3 Mandalorian's debut actually underperformed the Book of Boba Fett, didn't it? It's something like 1.5 to 1.7 million viewers or something. Which the idea that there's only 1.5 million viewers for your mainline Star Wars TV production, it would be unimaginable, 10, 15 years ago. But it is the state we're now in. I mean,
the terrifying thing is like I could potentially get more than that on one of my videos.
Yeah,
talking about this. Any of us could, really, but I've done it before, and that's a guy in a fucking office just working on this, compared to a multi-million-dollar production. That's awful. That's not what Star Wars is supposed to be. Star Wars used to be a cultural event. It used to be reshaping the whole idea of pop culture. Now it's a bunch of irrelevant TV shows on a streaming service.
How did it come to this?
Well, it's similar to the Star Trek question. It's like you've got this huge wealth of stuff. How can you not tell a story? Find any story to tell out of all of the stuff in the lore, in the background. We know the case with Star Wars. It's because they got rid of it and then KK pretended it never existed. But the fact is, it's such a brilliantly imaginative creation. You've got a whole galaxy you can tell stories with. How the hell have we been reduced to just playing back over an already done era in galactic history that doesn't really mean anything because we know where it's all going anyway? But there was the other rumor, was it last week or the week before, that there were going to be 3 new Star Wars films announced in the next Celebration Day. What we have to celebrate, I don't know, but apparently they are going to announce another 3.
Can it be like Star Wars Commiseration Day or
Commiseration Day. But if that does prove to be true, maybe that's connected. Maybe they have actually given some kind of deadline and ultimatum. They're announcing 3 more, and the first one will be scheduled for release in 2025. It seems like an incredibly rushed schedule to try and put one of these things together in 2 years. I wonder if they know anyone who can just bash a script out in one go and turn it in.